So I just finished a rather strange one, which I'll get into. So Thebes, the forgotten city of ancient Greece by Paul Cartledge. So Paul Cartledge is a fantastic classicist and historian of Hellenic and Hellenistic history and culture, and the guy really knows his stuff. So I got this book thinking, we know so much about Sparta and Athens, but you don't really hear as much about Thebes. Thebes might even be not the third most important. It's either Thebes, Corinth, or maybe even Argos, from a Peloponnesian perspective. But anyways, Thebes. So I know of Thebes. I'm thinking this is going to be a really cool book about Thebes, and it is. But I don't know. I question why it was written or for whom it was written, because if you don't know anything about classical Greek history, it's interesting, but it's very sort of it's a small book. There are other books you could get that would tell you much more about Greek history and culture. There are definitely better books for a broad history of Greek culture. If you already know about Greek culture, then you probably already know everything in this book. If you've already studied classics, there isn't really anything new in this book. It says it's about Thebes, but a lot of it is a retelling of Greek history, the Hellenic Persian Wars, the Atheno-Peloponnesian Wars. It's sort of the stuff we already know, and some of it is told through a Theban perspective and with Thebes in mind, certainly, but a lot of it is Athens and Sparta, Athens and Sparta, Athens and Sparta. Just sort of the same story that we already know. So and I think it's not the fault of the author. It's the fault of the paucity of our sources, of course. But the very early stuff where he's talking about sort of the founding myth of Thebes. I guess that's interesting because that's sort of unique to Thebes. How their Acropolis is called the Cadmea, from Cadmus, who was not a Greek, but someone from a Phoenician city who had migrated to Thebes and settled there, and how they are sort of see themselves as the birthplace of the Greek alphabet, because Cadmus and he took the Cadmean letters from Phoenicia, and so there's some really interesting stuff about early Thebes. But again, after that, it just gets into a lot of just Hellenic stuff that's not specific to Thebes. And it also seems to build up to this part when Thebes becomes this hegemonic polis in Boeotia, and then in all of what we call Greece. But that period lasts for a decade or two or three. It's a very short period of time. And then, of course, the Macedonian hegemony and the Hellenistic world post Alexander the Great. So other than that sort of one chapter, the Theban heyday, chapter 9, it's not really a book about Thebes, I would say. And even that one chapter, if you're reading any other book about sort of a survey of Greek history, when you get to that Theban heyday, it's going to be focused on Thebes. So to me, not that this book was pointless, but this book was strange. And it got even stranger near the end. Maybe it's recency bias. The last two chapters to me were just bizarre. So he ends with how sort of Thebes, how it has impacted modern day life, and how the effects of Thebes over time. And it's basically all on these plays written by Euripides and Sophocles, that have Boeotian or Theban links to them, and how they are portrayed in the modern days. So he went sort of on a survey of various modern adaptations of these plays, and sort of gave his critique on them and his which felt like very much his personal taste. Like, I didn't like this play, and I did like this, and this guy wrote a book which was really good, and I like that. This other person added a new character which added nothing, and that wasn't great. And then his conclusion was about worshipping, like the modern worship of Hellenic, of Greek gods, and how today, in the modern day, we still worship these gods, and it like totally lost its Theban arc at all until the very last paragraph, where he's like, yes, remember Thebes? That's what we're talking about. I don't know. It was very bizarre. I love the cover, though. I love the monochromic, the black and white. I think it's a beautiful looking book, but don't judge a book by its cover. Yeah, to me, I mean, I enjoyed it. It's been a while since I've read anything. Well, I mean, I've read some Greek and classic authors, but no histories of Greece for some time. So it was nice to sort of refresh my mind about, oh yes, the Battle of Chaeronea, Battle of Salamis, Thermopylae, all that stuff. And I did like, because I'm a language linguophile, I did like how he puts in sort of etymologies, and like here, the Greek word ekstasis, stasis meaning outside, or sorry, stasis meaning standing, ek meaning outside, so standing outside oneself. So being ecstatic is being almost outside of yourselves. Anyways, yeah, so all the different etymology and all the different, like comedy, komoidia, satiric being satyr based. I loved all that stuff, because it's been a very long time since I've studied ancient Greek, the language. So yeah, so I enjoyed that, but like I said, the sort of overarching story, it seems to be just the Greek story, but now and then mentioning what Thebes would have been doing at this time, or any tiny little source we have, which there are very few, mentioning Thebes, or from an author or writer who was from Thebes, or even Boeotia. So Boeotia is the sort of, not province isn't the right word, but the general area that contains a number of polis, number of cities, city-states, of which Thebes sort of became the preeminent. So Theban and Boeotian are linked. So even if he's not talking about Thebes, he'll mention the Boeotians, because Thebes is included in that. Yeah, so that's this book about Thebes. I mean, it was really cool to read about. I have to look at the name to remember how to actually pronounce it, because I've never actually heard it. I've only read it. Epaminondas. Epaminondas. This guy who said he was like sort of the, I don't know if I want to say the Pericles to Athens. This guy is to Thebes as Pericles is to Athens. This sort of like major general who sort of oversaw the Thebes in its heyday. He had a line that Boeotia is the playground of Ares or something, because there's so many wars that happen there. And there was another metaphor where Boeotia, this place with all these city-states, it's not like Attica where the Peloponnese, Lacedaemonia, where Sparta or Athens sort of rule supreme and are have all these sort of subjects. In Boeotia, it's described as a forest of very tall trees in a strong wind that are constantly bashing against each other, and will sometimes break as they clash against each other. So they are unified ethnically, linguistically, geographically, and politically at times, but they are still very much fighting amongst themselves. And I did get that image of Thebes throughout this as being a sort of a very, not polemic isn't quite the word, but a very, they weren't very complacent. They were always sort of, they wanted to, maybe polemic is the right word. They wanted to fight others. They wanted to stir stuff up. They were never happy with their lot. They wanted to be better and have more. And which I guess is just a human trait. But the way it's written, Thebes really seems like it's just an upstart, and it tries so hard to play Sparta and Athens against each other, and it's constantly switching sides, and then it finally gets its heyday. And then Alexander the Great comes and utterly destroys it. So yeah, I mean, it was interesting, but I don't know what the book was written for, what its purpose. I before I do these videos, or I do not look at reviews or anything before I do these videos. And I mean, I don't often look at reviews anyways, but I am curious to look at reviews for this book and see if other people who are, of course, much more educated and knowledgeable about this topic feel the same as I do. That this is just sort of a weird, it's just like a really quick summary of Greek history with Thebes on the title, and like whenever we can mention Thebes, we'll mention Thebes, and then it just gets, like I said, really strange at the end, talking about modern adaptations of these plays and modern worship of the gods. Anyways, so yeah, so I read Thebes. I read a book, and again, Paul Cartledge, like I have his book. Yes, this one, Alexander the Great, which is a fantastic book. But again, the lack of sources for Thebes, I think, really just does a disfavor to this book, and kind of makes it so it's impossible to write a book on Thebes. But I guess he did write a book on Thebes, so maybe he did the best he could. And anyways, I don't know. It just felt weird to me. So that was Thebes.